The Romans left a deep imprint on Catalonia. The Catalan language, laws and territorial organisation are clear evidence of this, as is the rich architectural heritage. Tarago, present-day Tarragona, has the most plentiful Roman remains in the Iberian Peninsula. Despite this, hardly any traces of Roman religious buildings have survived to the present day. The only examples are the columns of the temple in Barcelona and the ruins of the temples in Empúries and Tarago. This makes the Roman temple in Vic all the more remarkable, because it's the only building of its type in Catalonia that has come down to us. The Roman temple of Auso stands on the highest point in the city of Vic, to the east of the main square, beside the church of La Pietat, in one of Catalonia's best preserved old city centres. The castle of the Moncada family occupied the same site from the 11th century onwards. The castle was square, and the walls of the old temple lined the inner courtyard. In the mid-15th century, the city councillors bought the castle from the Count of Foch. For a while, it became the residence of the king's delegate. Later, it served as a municipal prison and granary. In the middle of the 19th century, a new prison was built beside the church of the Capuchin friars, and the old castle, by now very dilapidated, was abandoned. In 1880, the state put it up for sale. The private purchasers who bought it planned to demolish it and put up a new building. When demolition began, 2 years later, a master builder named Josep Torner recognized some of the remains as Roman. He alerted a historian, Josep Serra, and one of the cathedral canons, Jaume Collell. They identified the building as a Roman temple which had become part of the medieval castle. Serra and other leading citizens of Vic founded an archaeological association which bought the site so that the historic building could be preserved. The discovery was not altogether a surprise, because for centuries people had associated the area with the Roman world. In the mid-17th century, one of the deans of the cathedral, Joan Lluís de Moncada, wrote, "Tradition has it that this castle was built in the days of the Romans, and that they called it after Hercules to commemorate the fact that the castle and city were founded by Hercules."
Junto con la ciudad de Ausona.
As soon as the temple had been discovered and saved from destruction, restoration got underway. Nearly all the foundations of the original temple had survived, along with the podium and 3 of the 4 walls that stood round the inner courtyard of the castle. The whole of the north and west walls were recovered. The south wall had been demolished, but was rebuilt out of the original materials. Of the east wall, only the foundations survived. The walls were made of a variety of materials, large blocks alternating with small ashlars. A few parts of the original portico, a Corinthian capital, part of a column, and several pieces of the cornice were found among the remains of the castle. The temple stood in the middle of the sacred precinct, or temenos, which was surrounded by a wall, the peribolus. During excavation work in 1983, a wall that may have been part of the peribolus was found. Its location is marked by the cobbles in the street outside, which face in a different direction. All these surviving features made it possible to achieve a reasonably faithful reconstruction of the original building. In the first phase, the walls that had been demolished were rebuilt and a roof was put on. Between 1927 and 1930, the colonnade was rebuilt, and each column was dedicated to some outstanding personality of the region of Ausona. Finally, in 1957, Manuel Serra, the son of Josep Serra, who discovered the temple, funded the restoration of the roof and pediment. The temple is built of sandstone. It is pro-style. In other words, it has columns only at the front, and hexastyle, meaning that the columns number 6. The pediment on top rests on Corinthian capitals. The podium consists of large rectangular stone blocks and is prolonged by the front steps. The windows that were added when the castle was built are still visible on the walls. The temple was built at the beginning of the 2nd century AD, though the oldest remains found in the area date from a century earlier. Despite the legend about Hercules, it's not known who the temple was consecrated to. It may have been dedicated to the cult of the Emperor Augustus, because a grave marking found in the city shows that there were custodians of the imperial cult in Auso. The fact that the Roman city of Auso had a temple is a sign of its importance. Further proof is provided by the valuable items found round about the temple. These include a votive altar to the goddess Diana, now in Vic Cathedral, and several lead burial caskets and tile graves containing fragments of pottery and other goods. These were found in a necropolis on the site of an old tannery. Several milestones that stood along the roads into the city have also been found in various parts of the region and are now in the Vic Diocesan Museum. 125 years have passed since a group of citizens in Vic took on the responsibility of preserving a treasure from classical antiquity that had appeared among the rubble of a medieval castle. They purchased the Roman temple and restored it as a legacy for future generations. Thanks to them, the city of Vic is still able to enjoy one of its most emblematic buildings today. The tradition is carried on by a local studies association, the Patronat de Estudis Usonencs, which conserves and restores the temple, uses it as its headquarters, and organizes concerts, exhibitions and lectures there. Thus, the ancient Roman building is still very much alive and continues to serve the city after nearly 2,000 years.